First of all, thanks to so many of you who already live have watched the press conference. It's obvious that not many of you got the chance to see the full 26 minutes of it. So I'm glad we were able to bring that to you. Okay, so there's no question this guy is articulate, very well spoken. If he was half as good in the interview process as he was in the press conference, you can see why they picked him. Watson, there's a lot without knowing much about him. There's a lot to like off what we just saw.
Well, what I've always said about press conferences, and Lord knows I've been in a bunch of them, all you can do in a press conference is hurt yourself, and he sure didn't do that. He handled himself first class. He answered everything in the way that I felt like was a team answer. And there's nothing else you can do. I think you can hurt yourself in press conferences with some of the things you might say. He did not do that. I got it that he's 100% wanting to do it in Mike's philosophy, the way Mike wants to do it. He's the type GM that I would want with that philosophy. I wouldn't want a guy to come in and say, well, with these guys we got here, we should do this. I wouldn't want that. I would want a guy to say, okay, this is what you need. Let's go find it. If this is what you need at linebacker, let's go find it. And so I was very impressed with him. The only thing that I got was, man, I'm already learning them a little bit, but I want to learn the offense and defensive philosophies. Well, if he's learning an offensive philosophy, maybe we're keeping the one we got, Maybe that's what we're going to do. I can't see Mike leaving his philosophy, and therefore I think he's going to go to Ran and say, here's what I need at this position, here's what I need at this position. Looks to me like a good hire to me, George. I think it's what Mike needs. Mike does not need a ego patting chest. Mike Vrabel don't need that because that's not Mike. Mike doesn't do that. He needs a guy kind of in the same mode he's in. I think this guy fits Mike's mode.
Yeah, Watson, I totally agree. I was really impressed just by his answers. And I think, honestly, when it came to Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, who are coming up kind of at the end of their contracts, and they're going to have to make a decision about what they want to do with him or what they want to do with both of those guys, I felt like the answers he gave were the perfect answers, which is I'm not even going to comment on the Ryan Tannehill. I just got here. When they asked about, can you build a roster around a running back? I'm saying, sure. Yeah, absolutely you can. I felt like there were some trap questions there that he definitely could have gotten into, definitely could have gotten in the weeds of some stuff. And probably, we could take a quote he says and misinterpret it. But what you're saying is exactly the truth. In those interviews, all you can do with those press conferences, all you can do is hurt yourself. And he was not willing to go and step into any of those kind of traps that maybe some of those reporters were asking him about. And so I also know if I'm Coach Vrabel, I really appreciate, obviously you got to back it up with what you do, but really appreciate just even the way that he went about that interview. So yeah.
To me, that's one of the important things about running it is there's a difference between reading quotes in a paper and seeing what the person's reactions are, why he's saying what he's saying, that email or print doesn't necessarily do justice to, which is one of the reasons I wanted to run the full thing and give everybody that chance. So we now know the word collaborative was a big deal in this whole search. And I guess, Watson, he sold them that, hey, I trust Mike Vrabel. If this is what he says he wants, I'm going to go to try to help go get him what he wants.
Well, the one thing that kept sticking out, he went back to it probably 6-7 times. We came from the same tree. We've been through the same philosophies. And that, of course, that's through the Patriots and the Belichick philosophies and how to do things. And there's no doubt in my mind, Bill Belichick is the one that's in charge of the philosophy and he has help on picking the players in that philosophy. And I think Mike came up that way. Ran came up that way. I think the 49ers are being run that way right now. And when you start having the GM start making philosophical moves, I think you're in a kiss of death. It's a matter of time that you're going to go down. You've got to let the head coach lay down the law on what he wants to do. Because, George, when he said, we put things in boxes too much, he's exactly right. You can't just go take an outside linebacker that's a great player that if you're in a 4-3 scheme and he's got to put his hand on the ground and he's never done that's stupid. So that's what I think he's doing. He will do. He was a football player, which I also think that's one reason I think Lynch is really good at 49ers. I think it's great that I think that's one thing we don't do now, George and Michael, Billy, in college. We've lost the guy that knows the game as ADs. ADs now are businessmen. They're fundraisers.
Bean counters.
They don't know the game, and we've lost that. And right now, I think the NFL is doing a better job of that than college football is.
Yeah, and you could tell he was really prepared for that. I think that was a big thing, and I think that might be a little foreshadowing of what we might see from him. Just prepared, on task, and he'll be kind of ready for anything. And I think that's what they needed.
Yeah, one thing that I took that I thought was really important, and it wasn't a cheap shot at anybody or anything like that. There really were no cheap shots, but just the importance of, being cut from the same cloth, Watson, like you were talking about, but also this ability to run the football. I think it's really, really good that the Titans didn't go and try to hire somebody that they're not. They didn't go try to hire somebody that has a totally different philosophy than Mike Vrabel, that we need to throw it all the way around the yard. And they hired somebody that really believes, listen, we want to run the football. We want to be tough on defense, and we want to shorten the game down a little bit. We want to be everybody's worst nightmare trying to play. And, he talked about that it's fun to throw the ball around, kind of be cute in the first, 6 weeks of the season.
Golden State Warriors.
Sure. Yeah. The Golden State Warriors quote, but you better be able to run the stinking football. And that's not to say it's Derrick Henry. It could be somebody else, but I think that's, the mold. He understands really well the mold of this Titan team, their identity. He mentioned it. It fits. It's the colors of their head coach, Mike Vrabel, and he's not going in trying to change that. And, Watson, we talk about what's your identity all the time, teams knowing who they are. And I think this press conference was positive for, reestablishing, reaffirming, we're just going to try to be the best version of who we are, but we're not trying to be like anybody else. And so I thought that was a positive thing.
I would say, Michael, before he got on the plane to head to Nashville for the first interview, he knew that he better have that philosophy.
Yep.
Or he was going to have no shot whatsoever. I did get the strong feel that Mike is probably going to be more involved this go around than he was the first time. That's the one thing I took out of it. I can't give you an example of that. It was just a feel I got through that whole conference that Mike is going to be a lot more involved this time than he was with John. That
it's almost
John
like he made
most of the calls, and Mike now is going to be more in it than he was. And I don't think Mike wasn't in it. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I think Mike's going to be more in it with this guy.
George, that was his first answer. It's almost like he made a point to say Mike Vrabel is my number one priority in this.
Yeah,
Well,
and
absolutely should be. I thought that was a great answer, because how could it be anything but? You and the GM, the football coach and GM, got to work. Man, you got to be connected at the hip, in my personal opinion, to make this work.
okay, so let's take it to, I don't know, boil it down to the low gravy. They're not bringing in somebody from Kansas City. Off of this, I would absolutely be floored.
Yes.
If the person that walks in as offensive coordinator has this stuff on. I don't see it.
No, especially after that interview. I was thinking about that when they asked him about the offensive coordinator job. I'm not saying it can't happen, but with everything he talked about, I don't know how you then jump to go hire a guy that comes from the Andy Reid tree. And that's not to say that wouldn't be a great hire, but when you're talking about trying to get your identity, Watson, you were with us on this one?
Yeah, I am. The only guy from Kansas City could be Matt Nagy, because he did not run the Kansas City offense
Right.
with the Bears. He did not. He went a different route, and so I don't know who they bring in. I still got a feeling it's going to be Kelly gets moved up, but if they bring one in, he's going to do the changing. It's not going to be the Titan changing to whoever comes in. That's what I say.
So is that totally good?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what we do as an offense. When we were healthy last year, we had very good balance, George. But it seemed like as we went on and we got hurt late in the year, and then all this year and got the injuries right out the gate, we got highly conservative, even worse so. But when we were rolling in that number one seed, we weren't just all handed to Derrick all the time. We weren't. And A.J. Brown was having a heck of a year. So I would like to think that's what we're going to see when we bring in another guy. I think Mike is looking to do one thing better: pass the ball, protect better, throw it better, pass the ball when we got to pass it. I think that's what Mike Vrabel down inside, he won't ever say it to us, but I think that's what he's looking for.
Completing forward passes.
Okay, so if that's the case, and I mean, it would have to be, this is as bad a receiving core as there is in the league, if not the worst, pretty doggone close. So let me ask you all this, and then we'll kind of cut off the discussion. We know there are a lot of needs, and we know that this guy is going to walk in and realize, I've got some problem solving to do. Can you solve it all in 1 year?
I don't think you can. Go ahead, Watson, if you want to go first.
Go ahead, Michael.
I don't think you can. I think you can address a couple needs and then kind of patch everything. You know, it's a work in progress. It's not as easy as we'd like to make it as fans. We'll do this, and it's all. I think you got to first start out and address the most important needs. You know, what can we not make it another year without at least really trying to address? And then obviously you're going to have some areas that you're a little bit weaker in that you're going to have to patch up. You know, offensive line, wide receiver, you know, those are some areas that are immediate. You've got to address coming out. Obviously there's some issues in a lot of different places, but I don't think it's realistic to think that you can just totally fill this team to exactly how you want it in a year. I think you got to look at what can we fix now? Where are we in the draft? What can we afford free agents wise? You know, a lot of that comes into the scope of who's available. But I think you can patch up a lot of things, but they're not long-term fixes. I think you got about 1 to 2 positions you can probably fix long-term here.
I can answer that in 2 words: cap space. I think it's all off of money they have, George, how far they can go. And that just starts with the big decisions with Taylor Lewan, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry. They got to go there first, because you can't come up with a philosophy till you know the dollars you have. And so I think it's 2 words: cap space. I think that's what they deal with immediately right out the gate.